G'day and welcome to the Head Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO at Next Gen Agri. At the Head Shepherd podcast, we focus on all things livestock through the stories of the people that farm them and the people that study them and work with them on a daily basis. We get to work in amazing locations like I am today at Glenthorne Station here in the South Island of New Zealand. At Next Gen Agri, our tagline is farming in our hearts, science in our heads. And we live that out every day, and you'll certainly hear that coming out in the Head Shepherd podcast. Before we start today's episode, I really do want to thank again Allflex, our sponsors, and now the MSD team for continuing to support our podcast. It really is fantastic to have such a great collaboration, and the combined forces is pretty exciting for Australasian agriculture. The science of healthier animals through ID and through the animal health products like the Cooper's range, which is an MSD product that we might be more familiar with. Fantastic to have such a close alignment with those two companies now. Just really exciting to continue Head Shepherd. We've gone past our 50 episodes. We're into season 5 now. Fantastic to see the podcast continue to grow. Thank you to all those that continue to support us and give us feedback. It's really is awesome. We better get on with the show. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. This week, got a very good friend of mine, Andrew Kennedy, which will be referred to as Ox for the rest of this interview, because that's the only way I know how to talk to him. But welcome, Ox.
Thanks, Mark. Marcos, Berg, Cowboy. What are we going to call you during this one?
Oh, well, any of those will work, mate. That's
Cowboy sounds good.
Probably not that one, but anyone, we'll work with that. We'll have to tell that story if we get, as we continue on. Welcome along, mates, and good to have a chat. I guess it'd be good to start with, go right back in time, 2001. I think you and I were in a shed artificially inseminating ewes at Austral Park to start the Lifetime Wool project, which became Lifetime Ewe Management, which a lot of people will know about. But yeah, back then we'd first met, and I guess our careers have sort of been in touch with each other ever since. But they were interesting days way back then.
It's good fun, really good fun. Yeah, back at Dave Robertson's at Austral Park in Coleraine. Yeah, I was actually finishing off university at that stage, and was doing work placement at the DPI, where you were working, and got co-opted to go and help these guys out in the shed. Little did I know I was putting ewes into cradles all day long. It was pretty good.
So I guess then from there we've sort of we ended up working together a lot, and I guess your career has been really focused on systems and your ability to think through how to make money out of different things, I guess, is what we've done. Back then we were looking at over there at Moroa, there was a significant impact of legumes and grass and the mixed species, a whole heap of stuff that happened back in those days.
Yeah, it was good. I think, I got hooked into you guys. I think it was funny. I said, going through university and stuff, I said I'd never work for, agriculture department. I suppose that was just the reputation that it sort of had. But, I got hooked into, you and probably, both our mentor, Andrew Thompson, who's a legend. The work was just really interesting. I did some sort of technical work on, Lifetime Wool with you guys, but then sort of got thrown across to a prime lamb project, which, was looking at alternative legumes and growing lambs as fast as possible on pastures and things like that. And then, that sort of threw me into doing some larger sort of pasture systems trials across a few farms across southwest Victoria, which then just pushed you running into, some bigger size producers and making some friends, for life, basically, as a pretty young person. So it was a really good experience, good team, unbelievable team to work in. It's pretty lucky, probably, really, to land in that team that just gelled and worked together. It was a pretty phenomenal experience.
Yeah, it was, and I guess you Tomo gets a fair few mentions on this podcast, and one day we'll trick him into coming along and being a guest. But we were both pretty lucky to come across Andrew Thompson and learn a lot from him and work in that team. I guess, often think about teams and how you build them and stuff, and sometimes you just get lucky like then. I guess everyone can probably remember a team that where everything worked, and certainly we had it then and had a few since then as well. But that was my first experience of a team that really worked flat out together and got a lot of work done.
A lot of work. It was, it was, I just remember, weighing and condition scoring, 1,500 sheep in a day, collecting fecal samples all day long out of sheep. That's certainly builds resilience. So.
Yeah. I look back on those days when now we have EID, and like we were on the borderline of EID then, and we probably, if we had have looked hard enough, we could have been using EID in that data collection, which would have probably put one of us out of a job anyway. Would have made it a whole lot more efficient. But I look back at pen and paper and recording all those, which should be a whole lot easier these days. But certainly we did it the hard way, but learned a lot of skills, and I guess they've taken us both our careers, set us on a good track. I guess there's lots of things we could talk about because we've got lots of stories that we could tell about each other. But I guess one thing I wanted to, before I get into that, we should obviously mention that Kirsty's the reason that I know you, and so Kirsty and I were lucky enough to be cadets with the department back. Kirsty, who's now your wife, obviously, for those who don't know. Back in department days, we were lucky enough to have cadetships, which was, I think, only ran for a few years, that actual program, but it meant that we were developed as had work experience and support right through our uni days, and obviously we got to know each other pretty well. And then through Kirsty, met you, and then we're sort of, I guess we've all been working sort of together since then. But should make sure we bring that up. And when we get onto Thrive Agri in a minute, we'll obviously chat about Kirsty again. But
he's been a very strong motivator for me in my career. It's she's been a star. So give it that plug. But that's it. Yeah, that's how we met. So it's pretty important link.
Yeah. And I guess then next time we sort of properly, then I went off to WA, and then and you ended up over there as well, and your PhD was doing a whole heap of farm modelling, which I will never even try to understand. But I do know that one of the questions you were trying to answer was optimising ewe mature size, which is a question we get all the time, like how big should ewes be? So I don't know, how big should ewes be?
How big they should be? It's an interesting question. I think we probably maybe overemphasise or put too much emphasis on, it as a big farm systems question. I nearly threw 3 computers out the second floor window of DAF we're building, trying to answer some of those questions. The old farm modelling can be certainly a frustrating game at points, but very well. Look, the simple outcomes out of the PhD were that you could essentially run any mature size, and we tested, from 50, 60, 70, 80 kilo, genotypes, that's standard reference weight, in sheep genotypes within the model. And I suppose what we did to what some of the other studies did differently was we did a sensitivity to turn-off weight. So essentially you could run you could be profitable at any mature size as long as you adjusted that turn-off weight to maximise, the amount of kilograms, per hectare that you were turning off. So if you run a big genotype, then you need to produce big lambs. If you run a smaller genotype, then you need to run lots of lambs to make up for that, those 2 levers that are producing the amount of, kilos you're producing per hectare. Basically the simple outcome from the PhD. Took a long time to get to that simple outcome, but that was a result of it. And so it's an interest. Yeah, it's certainly still an interesting one to this day. I think some of the stuff that Tomo's doing and his crew there of whole body energy and stuff is probably, I think the models are good for what they are at the moment, but there's probably some things that we can, that can be done to improve those and our understanding of it. But it was interesting. We've done some weights and condition scores on some flocks recently, and I think the general, sort of outcome is that everybody overestimates how big their sheep actually are when you get into working out what their mature size is, or we say standard reference weight, so condition score at weight at condition score 3. And I think what probably, the comment about the whole body energy is that the reality is that there's some genotypes out there that probably put on a whole lot more, fat and muscle and everything else, and condition, whatever you want to call it, per change in condition score. So, how big a sheep in terms of how heavy it is, and I think sometimes producers might see a ewe that's in high condition score. She might be carrying twins, and she happens to run across the scales and she's over 100 kilos, but she's carrying, she's probably carrying 15 kilos maybe per condition score change, and she's got conceptus weight in her as well. So she might only be a 70 kilo sheep, but she's carrying 30 kilos of extra, sort of weight in there that's not standard, if that makes sense. It's pretty easy to sort of get, think we've got massive sheep, and I'm sure we do have big sheep, and there are big sheep genotypes across the place, but when you actually go and measure it, sometimes it doesn't, you don't see it as often as what you think it is. So
that's interesting. It's not. I was going to make a comment about overemphasising the size of things and being blokes and stuff, but
I hadn't thought about that one, but I'll use that in a presentation somewhere, Ferg. That's a good one. Maybe our rulers aren't quite right, aren't quite the correct length, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. But I guess that's a good point. Like, we hear a lot about ewes are getting too big, and I guess we see it in places, but I think it's easy to actually go the other way too, particularly if you're getting paid for. You got like small ewes. If you're trying to take out heavyweight ewes and heavyweight lambs, then those small ewes aren't going to be as efficient at doing that job either. So there's obviously a trade off, and it's interesting. You can work for a number of years on a model, and then not everyone wants the clear answer, but there never is one in biology, unfortunately.
The funny, it's not a funny thing, it's no brainer, but once you're optimised for stocking rate, reproduction is, there's no minimum reproduction across those. It's trying to maximise the number of, lambs turned off, per hectare as much as possible. That's the key driver as well that you sort of you don't see.
Yeah. That's really makes a good point, the optimisation of stocking rate, which, I don't know, it's a rare business you would say that actually has got that optimised.
I think, it's pretty rare. Like, we know, like, the economists, and I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination, but, pasture utilisation, it's the cheapest feed source, pasture, we're feeding animals. So we know pasture utilisation is a key driver of profitability. How many people are utilising that pasture resource to the maximum that they possibly can to optimise profits? Probably, not a lot. I wouldn't say. There's some people push it too far, but then there's probably the majority out there aren't even going close to probably where they're optimised profit for that utilisation. So,
have you got any understanding as to why that is? Have you, like in your days, have you see any key reasons for that? It's a big question, I realise.
It's a good question. The reasons why they don't. Look, there's risk. We talk about risk, and bloody economists love talking about risk, but risk is really just about people's ability to take a gamble, really. And I think people are comfortable. I think the one thing that stands out to me is that at the moment with livestock prices and commodity prices where they are, is that there is a little bit of comfort coming in, and whether they're pushed to the limit in terms of driving profit from utilising their resource. I reckon that's an interesting thing. If we saw, particularly lamb price drop, a little bit. I don't think, I don't see it's going to happen, but, imagine if it dropped back to $5, what would we be doing in the sheep game? We'd be absolutely trying to utilise that resource and trying to, run as many as we can, try and turn off as many as we can, try and produce as many kilos, because that's, what we're going to be, pushing out the other side. So, why they don't utilise, there's a sustainability factor in it. I mean, it's a fine edge. One of the things the modelling shows you really well is that if you're understocked, then you'll actually have poor feed quality. You'll have problems finishing lambs, and then if you're overstocked too far, well, then you run into problems with managing ewes for their nutrition profile, etc. So there's a bit of a knife edge there in a spot where you can go too far or you're not going far enough. So I think people, it's a bloody good question. I can explain all the reasons why they're either not, Ferg, but I don't know why people, it's such a hard thing. Seasonal variation, everything. It's a hard thing year in, year out. I think that's what, as farm systems people, we're trying to, and I think what's nice about some of the things that are coming forward with critical control points, and you've had Jana Hock in some of your stuff about actually systemising our process and farm and realising that, if we have variability in feed supply and we have variability in, we can control all the factors that we need to control and actually just put a repeatable system in play. I reckon that's probably the real exciting bit in farm systems. I think and where we can move, like where do we go in sheep systems? And it's about putting a repeatable system in play rather than saying, it's a bad year, had not such a good season, or it's a ripper season. It's the same system year in, year out, and we're just dealing with the variation we're given. And farmers are very good at that. And that's, when we talk about climate change and everything else and happening, well, they deal with change very well. And I think that's where we can drive some real efficiency, is just making a repeatable system year in, year out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think there's always risk in business and risk in farming. And but the greatest risk is kind of not making the most of the good times, and I guess people are always, farm a little bit off that knife edge just because it's more comfortable when you're not sitting on that knife edge. But I think as you move around the country, you see the areas that have had more often than not have a good time, and there's often a bit less innovation in those areas where they haven't been put to the wall as often.
We get stuck in very much a within year mentality, and I think some of the really good operators that you see are thinking about, like, for example, now, a lot of sheep are being sold, weaned, whatever else. They're thinking about next year. They're thinking about managing ewes for next year. So, they might be current, or if they're currently at the lambing period, they're thinking about how that's going to go, and then they're thinking about what the implications are going to be for next year. We might be in 2021, but their mindset is also thinking a lot about what's happening in 2022 and so forth. So rather than just getting sucked in a seasonal annual cycle, they're actually pushing themselves to think for the forthcoming years. And that's I reckon, a standout, trait that you see in some of the operators that are doing a really good job.
Yeah, and I reckon that's, and they often have decisions sort of made before they need to make them, and that because they're looking out, then they sort of know that if this hasn't happened by this date, they're going to make that decision has already been made, and they're going to pull that trigger, and it might be urea and gibberellic acid if they haven't got the covers, or it might be sell that mob of lesser ewes or whatever it is to be ready to do, because once you're in the heat of the moment when a season's turning sour, that's the worst time to be making a strategic decision. Whereas if you've already made that decision and you know what it's going to be, you're just waiting for that time to tick over, then it's a pretty easy decision. But
it's so hard when you're in the business too. Like when you're in, and when you're in your business, and one of the key skills is to stand back and look at, and that's one of the, I think the other things that's important is to be able to assess and be objective about it. That's the one thing I picked up off the economists in dealing in that space for a little bit. They're so objective in terms of how they look at things. They can step back. it's an interesting thing. I reckon that's another key bit.
That's a good point. I reckon if you could develop one skill, it's getting out of the business, and yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, we're both in business, and we would be good and bad at this at different times of the year, no doubt. But yeah, getting out and stepping back and going, right, what's working, what's not, what's a good decision to be made here, like irrespective of the emotion that could be attached to some of those decisions. That's where it. Yeah,
bloody hard when you're busy. When you're busy, you flat out and take the step back. That's the challenge.
In terms of pasture utilisation and I guess this whole optimising systems performance sort of space, do you reckon technology, like future technology, is going to play a significant role? I guess we've kind of haven't seen any massive shifts in how we manage our grass and how we make decisions about when we're shifting stock and that sort of stuff. Do you see a imminent future where we could have much better decision making because we've got better information?
The potential's been there for a long time. We delved into some of this stuff back in the early 2000s, but no, technology is not like it is today. It should be easy to say, we've got satellite images, we've got whether in-field devices, whatever else to do, add some precision in there. I suppose, does precision deliver you the economics? I don't know. Does precision deliver you the value that you're trying to chase? So that's probably one of the questions. And how much does it deliver? It's a really interesting one because, pastures from space and things like that have been, they were happening when we were doing, Lifetime Wool was running around. There was some work happening then. So it should deliver some stuff and it should be able to, you'd love to go, I just think about, I'll use the example, think about, Tim Lambing. He's a fellow we work a bit with and, he should be able to go and move his, a couple of thousand ewes that are in one mob and he should be able to say, well, am I going to move them to paddock A, B and C? Which one's got more foo in it? Which one's better quality? No, these ewes need to be picked up a bit because they're my, all my twin bearing ewes from last year. I want to put them in the paddock with the highest feed quality and the highest feed availability. It should be paddock B. But, we're not there, are we?
No.
And
that's it.
So I don't know. I think that potential's there to do something like that. But whether we've got to that position or not now, it's it'll be interesting. Technology is an interesting one. It's funny, and I've had similar interests to you over the time about a lot of tech stuff, and and I know there's some really handy people trying to crunch, work out how it works, in a farming system. But I suppose the agriculture, and particularly in the livestock game, it's still very, very young in terms of its evolution, really, isn't it? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that because you're heavily in it now.
I'm with you. I think there is massive potential, but we are only early in the days. I think, your example there of Tim Lambing is a good one. Like, we should know not just what's going to happen from shifting that mob today. That should be optimised based on this year's performance and next year's performance, and because we can predict enough of how much soil moisture we've got there now, what pasture growth rate is, what ewes are eating, and the whole rest of it. But I guess when we had Young, you do that modelling for us, John Young, who again gets a few plugs on this podcast, he showed that there was a massive amount of money in optimising, basically optimising gate opening, optimise when you shift paddocks from sheep from paddocks, and timeliness
of operations. I mean, it's a big one. Like, we talk about doing simulation modelling and stuff, and the beauty of a simulation model, it does everything when you tell it to do it. And exactly, you can put triggers in and say, when it gets to this amount of feed on offer, you move those sheep. And geez, it's a wonderful, it's probably the best farm manager around that you'll ever find. We don't have that same level of, intelligence or precision or whatever else coming through, in real life. And in some respects, that's probably a deficiency of, it's actually really nice that you can run some scenarios where you set up a simulation to actually run at a subpar performance, move them 10 days later than when they should have been moved and have a look at the effect. It's actually a nice, neat way of doing it.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that whole area intrigues me. And I think we'll get there, but we're certainly not there yet. And it will be interesting days. I guess while we were in WA together, we decided we'd set up a feed efficiency shed. I think we were probably early on to feed efficiency and sheep, and we spent I don't know how many hours setting up those pens, and it was interesting, really interesting, I guess, to start to really interrogate the differences in feed efficiency in animals and the whole role of methane and those things. Certainly got to see your full suite of skills doing that, mate, with being everything from welding to economic modelling.
We do everything. Jamming breeding objectives down people around fires and everything. We cover the whole gamut. We'll build something and test it. No, look, I think that's I think when you look back to when we were talking about all the concepts around feed efficiency and stuff back then, and it's an interesting one. I was thinking about this today when we were talking about doing this, and we were about feed efficiency and methane back then, but we were also about that stocking rate question. And we know that that there was animals back, early 2000s that seem to do better than other animals, when they're run on absolutely no feed. And where did that leave us? And I think we've always had the strong view that feed efficiency wasn't all it was to be cracked up to be, and there was other things at play. Tomo's trying to crack a fair bit of that stuff now, which is really interesting. I think, involvement in sort of some of the maternals condition score work with, is basically trying to replicate the Lifetime wool stuff in, maternal composites, showed us that, those some of those buggers were eating next to nothing and still maintaining themselves. And, it's certainly a massive area in terms of, and if you have a look at, that's probably the one area where there needs to be probably a fair bit more sort of, investment in that space, because, it's a no-brainer. You see, when you see it happening in the paddock, I think this is probably, one thing that we've probably, been exposed to and had the advantage of is that, we see things, when you set up experiments and stuff and you see things happening in the paddock and you sort of start questioning the biology or trying to understand the biology of why that's happening, and it just stimulates you to think about how that fits into the farm system and things. I reckon that's, that's sort of probably, I don't know, I'm speaking for you, but that's probably what motivates us to, test that angle, test that the boundaries.
Yeah, no, seeing is believing, and I guess having that, that control of scientific experiments and just seeing the natural variation you get and trying to understand why the hell you get that, and that's been, that's certainly set me on my career path, and really intriguing from a genetics point of view, and also from a systems point of view, which is more your space. It's really interesting and why one works and one falls over, and it's not always what you hypothesise when you start the experiment.
That's a good thing. That's good. A lot of experiments found things. I think I tell this story. The Lifetime Ewe Management, people we take through the training course about how, back in Lifetime we'll set up, the AI program, and the whole design was set up for singles, and the AI program didn't go so well in the first year, and you had to use twins, and essentially that set up the design to show that survival and reproduction and everything else was probably the biggest single outcome to come out of the experiment, even though it was focused, on wool quality and follicle density and stuff like that, and stuff, fetal programming. It was crazy. The sort of side outcome of the program became the biggest part of the program.
Exactly, and that's I often forget about that. How there was most of what came out of Lifetime Wool was actually stuff that wasn't meant to come out of Lifetime Wool. Yeah, that's that's pretty cool. And and I guess flexing to add those twins in, and that all of a sudden we find all those different response curves, and it became really important for reproduction. Whereas it was meant to work out the impacts of nutrition on secondary follicle development in single-born lambs was the original project. So, but luckily the AI didn't work so well, and we got to do the rest of it. But I guess some time in WA Ox, and then back to Hamilton with a bit of time there and back at DPI. But then made the call about the same time as we did to start a business. How's that journey been?
It was sort of. It's interesting. It's good fun. I mean, I was forced. I took a position with a larger corporate, and it didn't last that long. It only went for I knew it was a little bit risky, but and that was an interesting one. So we'd always had intentions of going, out by ourselves. I think after working so long in government roles, it can be fairly, it bashes you around a bit, dealing with all the red tape and everything else. And so, it was an opportune time. So I took that role, but then didn't last forever. So I ended up having to go, well, what are we going to do? So we sort of said, let's go into the consulting sort of advisor role. I don't know, consulting.
We should point out that company sold all their farms and sheep. You didn't.
No, I didn't send a break. No, they divested all their physical assets in Australia, which was it was a ripper roll, but anyway, that's the way things go. So it was interesting.
Sorry, mate, I thought that was important to point out.
No, I forget to say that when we were telling that story. And so look, we I suppose the challenges of starting up a small business. Look, I had my ABN for ages as a sole trader or whatever else, so I just started with that, and then Kirsty was, I think she sort of was still working in a government role, and I think she transitioned out over the next few months, into basically, you step up to a partnership, and then you realise you're sort of getting a bit bigger, and then you start the company and whatever else, and you're looking for work, you're sort of doing stuff, you're trying to build, basically, you're making money, you're trying to make money basically at the end of the day, but also trying to be, I suppose the thing that sort of always gets us is that we try and, we're genuine. I think it's for our background. You're trying to be objective, you're trying to deliver people value, and that's, I don't know, I think it's a tricky thing for somebody that's always been in sort of government roles and or, at university or whatever else, where you've been basically giving all your advice to people, for nothing, like you just whatever else. So then you throw in this circumstance where you're actually, charging people for things you're doing. It's, it's an interesting scenario to be in. So, so you work through all those complexities of starting a business, all the other things, and all the things that you were taking care for you when you were working for somebody else. So that you're now taken care of. So it's good. It's been good. I think the flexibility to basically choose your own path and where you want to go, choose what you do. I think the reason, why we're involved in agriculture, I suspect you're the same, is that we love, and it's a bit of, Thrive's tagline is we love seeing, animals do well. We love seeing systems do well. We love seeing people do well. Like, that's a really strong motivator with us. There's nothing better than, helping somebody and then seeing them succeed. Like, that's the, obviously we're trying to make money out of a business, but geez, that's the reward at the end of the day. So, so it's all good fun.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think we're farming our hearts, it's in our heads, our tagline, and same thing. Just that real. There's nothing like seeing success stories and hearing back that something's gone really well for clients or people that you work with. And I guess we've both been through that same challenge of we're always been paid to give information to other people and they don't have to pay for that information. And so that's actually changing your mind, being able to change that and say, well, at the end of the day, it doesn't happen. We no longer exist unless we make some money out of this. So that's an interesting, and that's probably an ongoing challenge, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure, it is. Yeah, how do you? And we're getting, I think we're probably nice people, and we have put people in to help our business do stuff that better at. We know stuff, but we need some business people around us. It's the step back that we had to make, like in the business, to say that's not our specialty. Let's get some people to help us.
Yeah, no, exactly. I guess if we did move on to Thrive Agri, so what sort of services are you and Kirsty and the Thrive team offering these days?
Don't want to be a big plug for you, Ferg. I just wanted to have a chat, mate. We do. Look, we do a lot of training where we've got some best wool, best lamb groups that we love. We took a couple of those over from another good mate of ours, Ken Solly. So he was sort of heading down the retirement track, and so we took a couple of his groups on, which have been fantastic, and they're really good. They're just, social. I think that's the nice bit where you get to go and do the social aspect, but then help out people, give you a bit of advice, but then connect them with other people. And that's part of the big role, is that, we're looking for, things for those groups to do, and you using your network to connect them to other people that they can get something of value out of. And they're really fun. I like doing those. Good people. They're a good thing. A range of sort of R&D, development and adoption type service work. So that might be for any of the rural development corporations. Some one-on-one stuff, obviously, that we do, ranging from a bit of sort of strategic type stuff, planning, sort of whole enterprise stuff. So really sort of levering off the farm systems type thing. But I think the more and more we do of that, we find that it's as much as anything, working with people and understanding, and it always has been. It's the approach, it's understanding the person, or the family, what their desires are, what their needs are in their enterprise, and trying to, be really objective with them and honest with them about things that, they mightn't be doing well, things that, obviously they do well, and trying to guide them in a direction where they can be, better off or better in terms. But I suppose the context is always around what they want to do, because, if you're not doing something you want to do, well then, it's a pretty hard battle to be doing something else that you don't want to do. So, that's good fun stuff. Like that's really good stuff. And anything from, nutrition, a lot of nutrition sort of type work, farm systems type work. We'll delve a little bit into genetics, but as you know, that's just becomes a factor, and it's a plug for you. But the reality is that if we run into any stuff that we just say, we end up handing them over to you and saying, well, that's, you're better off saying this bloke, he knows more. and I'm not going to, merino genetics and everything else is not really our specialty. So that's, straight away, we send them to you. That's
much pressure than that.
There's my take on some of those things. So
exactly. The one thing I've been seeing a bit on social media at the moment is, and heard a bit about last year, is your Thriving Ewe Lambs course, and I guess not course, but course, but more hands-on as well. I guess, how much are we seeing? When ewe lamb mating used to be, I guess, something novel. Now it's a lot of people having a crack. But what are when you ran it last year, what did you find as sort of the key, or some of the key things that people weren't doing well, or where people were missing the mark?
Yeah, number one, and this sort of came, we saw it in the data as it came through, but the producers picked up on it themselves, was that basically from the period from about now onwards through, basically December, January, and it makes sense. People get busy, whatever else. So they probably let the ewe lambs drop off a little bit, and in terms of feeding, nutrition, whatever else. And it's probably the period that coincides. If they're a June, July lammer, then probably that November, December period's where they've got their highest, essentially, protein requirement, energy requirement for growing and growth and everything else. And the ones that really nailed it, hitting their targets with their their joining weights and their live weight gain, basically made sure that the ewe lambs are growing fairly positive through that period. And quite often, a few of the other flocks, basically dropped or dipped at that point. And then come sort of mid-January, start of Feb, they're having to do a fairly strong pickup job to then get them up to that, basically that joining target, which generally coincides for the cohort that we had through, which is, southwestern Victoria. They're generally joining from about sort of, late Feb to, basically through March. And, it's a fairly rapid. So rather than sort of, you can maintain the ewe lambs at, 100 to 130 grams a day through that period pretty consistently, and they'll hit their targets, no worries at all. But then if you let them drop a few kilos over that period, then you're talking growth rates, past 200, 250 grams a day. And the cost of sticking, feed into them to get that out of them, at that period, then starts becoming fairly cost prohibitive. So I think it's probably no different. That was the big, major learning outcome for those guys. And I suspect that, and girls, I suspect this year that they're about to get a reminder soon, probably in the next week, for that cohort that went last year. Where are they sitting? What are they doing? Make sure that they don't drop them over Christmas. And I know it's a difficult time because they're selling lambs. Christmas hits, bit of holidays, whatever else, and it's not hard to drop a bit of weight off them.
Yeah, I was talking the other day I talk quite often about the fact that in the Southern Hemisphere we get ripped off with when Christmas is. Yeah. It's right when there's so many jobs on, and but it's holiday time, so it's like things like ewe lambs and setting ewes up for mating and getting those skinny twins on the right blocks and all that stuff is all the battle, because it's time when we'd all rather be spending time with family and at the beach or going wherever people go at Christmas, but the reality is, when it comes to that ewe lamb mating or ewe hog mating, if you're listening in New Zealand, it is, you kind of don't have many days to waste. Like you don't get to sort of just wean them and forget about them for a while, and then like you kind of have to be wean them and start really planning about where you're going to hit the mark.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about it earlier, but next year starts now. Like that's the reality, and that's for ewes or ewe lambs or anything. And I get it. Like, people have just been through lambing, they've just been through lamb marking, they're weaning, they're selling lambs, and they're looking for they're looking for a break. And unfortunately, we know that now's not the time to sort of drop off. It's to ramp it up.
No, that is a massive challenge. So there is a cohort kicking away again soon, is there?
Yeah, so it's due to kick off early December with the next cohort, and it's it's nice. We've got there's an online component to it, so we've got some good speakers in that. Tomo's into that. We normally recruit him into talking on that one because he's probably been across the ewe lamb basically management and nutrition stuff for the last 5 to 10 years. He's been sort of holding down a lot of the research and stuff. And
2009 we started, I think.
Yeah, weighed a lot of lambs. And Graham Martin and a couple of other guys, some Cooper's representatives as well, which is great because I think they're a sponsor of your show as well. So we're tagged in with them. So they come and talk to us about abortion and stuff like that. So an online component, which is really nice. I think one good thing COVID's done to us is that it's made us the online thing is an option. I always tell people, I said, it'd be not silly if we would do at least in previous roles 2 to 3 times a week. We'd get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, drive to Melbourne, sit in a meeting all day long, and then drive home again and do that a few times a week. And now and we had the options of teleconferencing, but we didn't want to. We wanted to meet face to face. So it's sort of it's COVID's forced the teleconferencing, but it's a good thing. It's a great thing. And the other part of the program is a sort of one-on-one with the individual, but then also a benchmarking exercise where we collect essentially all the weights from the ewe lambs that they're intending to breed, and they get benchmarked across all the participants in the program, in the cohort for that year. And we're sort of looking at trying how we include last year's cohort in as well. You're very good at creating the community, and the stuff that you're doing, and it's sort of a bit similar. Compare results with last year versus this year, and things like that. So that's a really good. I think we had something like 25,000 sort of good ewe records we could analyse from last year, and just gives a real grunt power into say for each individual producer, this is how you stacked up against the rest of everybody else in it, and this is some areas where you might need to improve on this or that. So I like it. It's good. Good mix of sort of online stuff, one-on-one. Get out and about.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Online stuff, like we'd still all rather be face-to-face, but it has made it more possible more acceptable to not jump in a car and go and catch up, or in my place, jump in a plane and go and catch up. And it's been interesting times, but certainly there's a lot of positives and lots of negatives, obviously, but lots of positives coming out of that. And this podcast is one of the positives coming out of COVID.
Oh, it's terrific. I might have said this. I don't know whether I said at the start. I'm bloody absolutely wrapped. You asked me to be on. Like, I'm bloody thrilled. All the superstars you've had on. I'm going, Jesus, I'm bloody wow.
Made it to the crew, mate.
Made it awesome. Big time. This is great. The pool room with this one.
That's right, mate. Yeah. No, awesome to have a chat, mate. We look forward to continue to work together, which we have for a long time and will forever. We'll put links to what you're up to in the show notes, and particularly that, I think, Thriving Ewe lambs is something that we'd recommend anyone to have a crack at if they're new into the ewe lamb space, or even if they're not. The ability to learn from each other and from the experts that you get surrounded with is obviously a great thing, and we never stop learning in ag or any business. But definitely recommend people have a look into that, and look forward to finally catching up in person, mate, sometime down the track.
It could be messy.
It could be.
Yeah, no, I do. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, no, it's excellent for, thanks for having me on, and yeah, keep it up. It's bloody great. I listen to the podcasts every week. Get on the lawnmower with my Bluetooth earmuffs, and first thing I go to, Head Shepherd.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good to hear, mate. No worries. We'll catch up. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers.